Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our last recording, um, non non-participant recording session, I should rather say. We're going to look at Learning Unit 6 tonight, and in particular, we're going to take a look at Theme 1, which has to do with reflective practice, as well as Theme 2, which then looks at philosophy and action, or philosophy in action, whichever way around you'd like to see it. So, um, basically, reflective practice is really just looking at how the importance of being a reflective practitioner, what it entails, what are the advantages, how you can actually practice it. And then in theme 2, we're going to look at really just discuss a little bit around what is teaching, what what is it about, and what all the variables that are involved in teaching. And then I'm going to challenge you at the end of this recording to come up with a metaphor um, of how you see yourself as a lecturer. Come up, basically, you're going to create or design or put together, present your teaching philosophy that you've hopefully established now over this last semester. And you're going to, put it in, kind of present it in the form of a metaphor, get a bit of creative thinking going there, and then you can choose how you want to present it next week. So, depending on how many people are on the call next week, give you each a minute or two or three to then present your teaching philosophy. So you can either do an infographic or a one slide presentation, or however which way you want to present it, or if you just want to have it written up, or if you just want to talk us through it, it really doesn't matter. And I'm also not going to put pressure on all of you to present if you don't want to, but it'll be great to kind of hear some of your philosophies and how you've developed it, and kind of put it together over this last semester. Okay, so before I get too carried away, let's move on with the theme 1 of Learning Unit 6, and that has to do with reflective practice. John Dewey is by far the most influential person here, um, American philosopher, educational reformer, and he simply believed that learning is not just passive absorption of information, but that it involves active participation, dynamic processing, and this can only happen through reflection on experiences. So he was, very big on saying it's not about your life experiences that helps you to learn or um, is important, but it's how you reflect on them that actually counts. And for him, it involves a cycle. There's the experience, there's the reflection on the experience, and there's the action taken after the reflection. He basically argued that, as I said, experience is not sufficient for learning. It's definitely the way we reflect upon it that kind of sort of enables us to not only make sense of it, but to draw our own conclusions, and then ultimately to acquire new knowledge and new insights. So then for him, through thoughtful deliberation, thoughtful reflection, we then uncover meanings um, and the implications of our experiences, so that we can identify patterns and connections, and then I suppose ultimately just develop a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. So reflection really involves active thinking, it involves introspection, it requires of us to ask questions, um, challenge our assumptions, and evaluate our actions, consider alternative perspectives maybe, and just looking at what worked, what didn't work, why didn't it work, why did it work. So it's just a bit of critical self-examination, and it really just helps us to learn from our mistakes, make certain adjustments, and then develop um, just better effective strategies for our lecturing and our teaching. Dewey also in his putting together of reflective practice. He said it's not limited to isolated instances and moments. So, it's not just all about um, the bad moment or the whatever moment. It should be an ongoing, integral part of the whole learning process. We just continually build upon previous knowledge. We're making connections the whole time, and developing or recognizing actually the interrelationships between ideas and concepts. So for Dewey, then, in summary, he's uh, kind of very clearly states that we learn from reflecting on experience, and it's an active role, and it's something that we engage in um, basically all the time, not just sort of in one moment or a particular moment. If we then have a look at the actual process of reflecting, we see that, and again, this is not cast in stone, and it's not going to be the same for everyone. It's also not going to be the same for every reflective moment, but it really just involves kind of like a combination of these steps, and it doesn't have to necessarily be linear. It doesn't have to be step by step by step in order. It can happen in kind of sort of a non-linear kind of way. And it's the way you go through these stages or the way you go through these steps is really going to be totally dependent on your personality, um, and the context of where this whole reflection is happening, and why you're reflecting. So um, there's always a trigger, there's always a stimulus that prompts us to reflect. And it could be anything. It could be something that happened in class, it could be a conversation you had with a student, it could be a question maybe that a student asked that you maybe just weren't able to really answer, or you felt that your answer wasn't sufficient. So this trigger then leads to you being aware of the need to actually pay more attention to this, and to maybe uh, kind of look into more the detail, maybe recalling the event, or just unpacking whatever it is, just kind of just yeah having a look at all the components of it. um, you also, yeah, it's kind of like leads into a description of the actual experience. You try and provide sort of an accurate account of what it is that what the trigger composed of. Um, and this kind of step, phase, moment, I don't know what to call it, but you would have to then um, look at the context within which it happened as well. That definitely plays a role in the whole process. The fourth step, or the fourth moment, fourth kind of thing that you'll become aware of, is that you explore your emotions around it. And it's very important to actually um, delve into the experience, delve into how this experience made you feel, or how this trigger made you feel. Why did these certain emotions arise within you? Um, because those emotions have led to other thoughts or other attitudes or other behaviors. And so it's very important to understand the emotional component of that experience. Once you've kind of unpacked the actual moment or the actual trigger with its connecting emotions or with its relevant emotions, you try and identify um, any other underlying factors or anything else that would influence this kind of like moment. Um, so try and analyze your reaction or your decision. If you made a decision in that moment or in that situation, the consequences, maybe there were already consequences that you are aware of. So you kind of just you're asking yourself probing questions to try and get a deeper understanding of the situation. So if it's something a student said um, that upset you or confused you, or in any of those kind of things, you're going to try, you want to get a hold of um, just completely understanding the situation. And then once you've you've analyzed the situation, you then start evaluating, and you have a look at, okay, so this is what happened, this is how I reacted, this is how I felt about it, this is contextual information, this is I've got a deep understanding of factors that influenced that whole situation or my reaction to it. So now what? What worked? Did it work? Was it good? Was it um, a good reaction or a good whatever situation? Could something have been done differently? Um, can I identify my strengths in this situation, my weaknesses? Um, is there anything here that I can learn from it? And that's kind of the evaluation phase or stage. And then you look at synthesizing all of this together. So you've gained some insights through your analysis and through your evaluation, and then you try and look for patterns or connections or any themes that kind of help you to develop a more comprehensive understanding of the experience or of the implications of this experience. And once you've kind of looked at that, new insights, new knowledge, you you make new meaning of that, and um, you'd make the decision to either incorporate that into future situations, similar situations, um, or yeah, just basically how you're going to do that, how you would actually then go about um, drawing upon your existing knowledge and your beliefs maybe to kind of make sense of what has just happened or the actual experience. And then you'll find the final stage or phase or moment is to then take action. So the whole reflection doesn't end with um, this is what worked, this is what didn't work, this is the new insight I've gained, this is I don't want to repeat this, or I do want to repeat this, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't stop there. Reflection has to it can only be complete once you've actually applied this new knowledge or this new perception, or you formulated a new plan of action, or you've made adjustments to your lecturing style, or whatever the case may be. Only then have you really reflected. So it's not just a case of it's not just going down memory lane, if you know what I mean. It's not just having a memory of the situation or thinking about it. It's actually intentionally gaining insight from it and intentionally coming up with a new plan of action and applying that. So it's really important to note that reflection is iterative, it's ongoing, it can be done in real time, it can be done immediately after an experience, or it can be done in a very structured manner at a later time. Um, the depth and the intensity of your reflection is obviously going to vary depending on the complexity of the experience, and also on what do you want to get out of it, what is your goal for reflection. But I think the important thing really to get out of this is it is an intentional process, and it is a very uh, empowering process for us as lecturers to grow and to develop our skills. If we look at some of the advantages of reflection, and there are many, I've really just come up with a few, and there's definite personal growth advantage, acquiring new knowledge, new insights, developing new skills, becoming more adaptable. I find the more I reflect on what I've done, the more I reflect on my day, the more flexible I become to change and to just being more resilient and kind of allowing myself to embrace change. And it also, yeah, it just enables you to have a more effective teaching practice. You're open to learning. You have a teachable spirit. Yeah, you're just so much more approachable if you have this whole reflective nature and reflective ability, that you don't just um, sort of like business as usual every day and just repeat the same kind of things that you did the day before out of habit, but that you actually just do it with intention and with proper thinking behind it. Okay, if we then take a look at some of the educational philosophers who kind of encourage reflective practice, there are actually many, and I've really just selected the kind of top 5 for me. Obviously, John Dewey, he's the most, the top one in the field. He emphasized the importance of experiential learning and reflective thinking. Again, as I've said, he believed that education is rooted in real life experiences, and that students should be encouraged to engage in reflection and engaged in making meaning out of their experiences. Another main thinker in this field is David Shern. Donald. Donald Shern. He was an influential educational theorist, and he's known for his work on reflective practice. I know our fourth year students do reflective, they actually use his textbook in one of their modules in the fourth year. But he introduced the concept of reflection in action and reflection on action. And so he argued that lecturers and teachers should engage in reflective thinking while they're not only after an action, but also in the midst of an action to adapt and make informed decisions. Another one is Paulo Freire, and he was a Brazilian educator, also a philosopher, and he is known for his development of critical pedagogy. He advocated for a reflective and a transformative approach to education, and his particular field of interest or particular sphere was in the context of social justice. So he emphasized the importance of dialogue, of dialogue within critical reflection, and and through that to encourage people or empower people to promote social change. David Cobb, he developed the experiential learning theory, which highlights the role of reflective observation and active experimentation in the learning process. So he proposed this whole cycle of experiential learning, and that it basically involves the experience, reflecting on the experience, conceptualizing that reflection, and then experimenting with it, putting it into practice. And then Jack Mezirow, he is known for his work on transformative learning theory. Brilliant book, Transformative Learning in Practice, if you get a chance to read it. He emphasized the importance of critical reflection in challenging and transforming learners, basically with the assumptions, beliefs, and perspectives, I suppose. So he proposed a process, also proposed a process of reflection, where you would critically self-examine yourself to overcome kind of like preconceived ideas, beliefs, to develop a more inclusive, open-minded view. I used his theory in my PhD, where my whole focus was on transformative learning, from basically, how can I put this without it sounding strange? But basically, we have racist blind spots, and for me, it was important for me to understand this whole transformative learning theory. So for me to critically examine my own beliefs and my own assumptions and my own blind spots, and that just helped me to become a little bit more inclusive and open-minded without even realizing that I wasn't. And I think at the moment I'm actually busy writing a book on exactly this, on how teachers can use transformative learning in order to assist just in their whole multicultural classroom. So yeah, I really do enjoy Jack Mezirow and transformative learning. Okay, I'm not diverting completely. So those are just a few. Those aren't all of the main thinkers in philosophy that adopt this kind of methodology or promote reflective thinking or reflective practice. And yeah, but their ideas have definitely informed educational practice, and they've been very influential in shaping the field of reflective education, which is yeah, really taking off. Okay, then if we look at how do we actually apply reflective practice or reflection, again, there are many methodologies that can be used, and again, I'm only going to highlight a few, but there's reflective methodologies that emphasize experiential learning, which we've now seen David Cobb is kind of like the lead in that. So that basically involves actively engaging with real life experiences. And you as the lecturer would encourage your students or yourself really to participate in hands-on activities, problem-solving situations, which will then provide opportunities for reflection and for learning from that experience. Then David Donald, I keep calling the guy David Donald Schoen, his whole reflection on and reflection in action emphasizes basically the importance of reflective thinking both during and after an action or an experience. And that while engaging in an activity, you're able to make informed decisions in real time because of maybe previous reflection, or you are reflecting within the moment. Then dialogic reflection or critical reflection, these kind of methodologies emphasize the role of dialogue. Paulo Freire's critical pedagogy, as well as Jack Mezirow, transformative learning emphasizes the importance of this whole dialogic or dialogue approach, where you through either with your own internal conversations or dialogue with a student, you unpack assumptions, your perspectives, you look at power dynamics, and through open dialogue, you encourage your students to question dominant narratives and to critically kind of analyze their own assumptions or their own opinions and beliefs. Collaborative reflection is a methodology that you can apply in where students or learners engage in dialogue where they're sharing experiences and collectively reflecting on them. The advantage of this is that you co-constructing the knowledge together, and you are in your collaboration, you're able to kind of reflect off somebody else's experience and maybe sort of, like your, what's the word I want to use, your conceptualization or your gaining of insight is going to be so much more richer because you're feeding off the experiences of somebody else. And then the last one that I just felt I needed to mention was a guided reflection where you as the lecturer facilitates sort of a reflective process with your students, where you just maybe prompt them with thought-provoking questions so that they are able to kind of unpack what they need to unpack or reflect on what they need to reflect on. Okay, so this, these applying reflection, obviously you can use it within your classroom, or just apply it to yourself. But it is definitely something, it's especially those of us who are involved lecturing of future future students, future teachers. It's really good. I think it's great for them to also understand reflective practice and just lecturing your students in general. I mean, we can all benefit from having a reflective attitude towards our experiences. Okay, then that's pretty much Learning Unit 1 covered. Learning Unit 2 for this, Learning Theme 1. Theme 2 for this learning unit has to do with philosophy in action, or philosophy and action. And I was thinking, before you can actually look at what is your philosophy of teaching, or before you can actually put your philosophy into action, it's good to kind of get a grip or get an understanding of what is teaching, I suppose. And I think it's important here to note that if you really think about it, teaching is complex. It's definitely multifaceted. Um, and it takes place in various contexts. It could be a formal educational setting, an informal setting. It could be one-on-one. It could be one-to-many, as in most cases, it's one-to-many. It could be many-to-one for that matter. And so it's really just about facilitating learning and creating opportunities for individuals to acquire knowledge, to develop skills, and to grow intellectually, as well as grow personally, I suppose. So if we kind of break it down a bit, can't really break it down into components, but I thought I'll touch on a few. There has to be some intention. So, yeah, teaching can happen without intention. I'm not saying that there has to be intention, but um, obviously, if you wanted to be measurable, there would have to be some intention. So, there has to be some deliberate intention on the part of the teacher to guide and facilitate the learning process. There has to be meaningful interactions between the teacher and the learner. Teacher has to not necessarily possess all knowledge or be the expert. That's not possible in all cases, but definitely possess a deep understanding of the content and to be able to present it in a way that is not only accessible to the learners, but also meaningful to them. So, yeah, it would require not only knowledge of the subject matter, but pedagogical skills to facilitate learning. It doesn't help if you are this great mathematician, but you have absolutely no way, no means or no understanding of how to actually explain all your knowledge to students. And then there would have to be some sort of supportive environment, an inclusive learning environment where experiences and experiences and instructional strategies that cater for all learning styles and take diversity into account. There would have to be some form of assessment of the student's progress and providing constructive feedback. Otherwise, you don't know if teaching has happened. And then finally, I suppose for me, and we all know this, that teaching really does go beyond imparting knowledge and skills, but it really involves empowering and inspiring students to themselves become lifelong learners. So in your lecturing, you're aiming to ignite curiosity, foster critical thinking, nurture creativity, and I suppose instill a love for learning, encouraging your students to take ownership of their own learning and to explore their various interests. So, yeah, that was just kind of some things that I thought of as to what teaching really is. But again, it's so context specific and it's so, well, not context specific, but content dependent and people to people dependent. Um, and it also is a combination of activity, experience, and relationship. So if there's no activity, if there's no teacher or lecturer, sorry, I should use the word lecturer. If there's no lecturer um, who's kind of presenting or have a range of intentional actions and behaviors that they carry out, no lesson plans, and there's no designing and providing guidance, then teaching can't happen. So there has to kind of be some form of activity. There has to be an experience. So there has to be some process that unfolds in real time for both the students and the teacher to engage in, some kind of interaction there. Um, either instructional interaction or discussion or whatever it may be. And then lastly, there would have to be some form of relationship. So teaching is really fundamentally rooted in relationships. It involves the establishment of a teacher-student relationship, but not only teacher-student, also it would involve relationships between teachers and other colleagues, between teachers and parents, and even between students themselves. So these relationships shape the learning environment and kind of has an impact on the overall educational experience. So effective teaching would then involve skillful orchestrating of activities to create these positive learning experiences, and all this within the sort of like nurturing relationships. So that for me is teaching, but again, it is my personal take on it, and it can definitely differ from yours, from your idea, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, as I say, have to be intentional or etc. Learning and teaching can happen in any. I mean, I'm just thinking now. I'm busy. I'm busy talking to my laptop screen. I know that right now nobody's hearing me, so right now I am not teaching, although I have prepared the lesson and although I am actually delivering the lesson, but I'm not actually teaching because there's no recipient, there's nobody on the other side. I don't know if that makes sense, but I was just thinking about that now. So am I really teaching now? Mm, so then what is teaching? It's I'm doing the activity, I'm providing the experience, but there's no relationship right now. It's just me. Okay, I'm now getting way too philosophical for a Thursday night. Okay, then the last thing is do we define teaching by its intentions or by outcomes? And I think I touched on that now with my whole thing of am I teaching now? Because the intention is there. The intention is for me to be teaching, but there's nobody receiving it, and I cannot measure the outcome of it. So it's really just a bit of both, right? So it's both of these concepts, whether it's intentional or we look at it as the outcome of teaching. However we define it, these two concepts are interconnected and interdependent. So teaching is characterized by intentional actions, as I've now said, and there has to be specific goals, objectives, and the intention is to guide this planning or the instructional strategies with your students. But then teaching is also defined by the outcomes, which refers to things that we can observe, that we can measure, and see what is the result of the teaching process. So the outcomes provide evidence of whether we've had effective teaching or not. But then, then we also have to look at how do we define outcomes? What is outcome for you? So yeah, then we look at it completely differently. And if we look at the relationship between intentions and outcomes, we have to see that it is dynamic because there has to be alignment. Effective teaching requires a definite alignment between your intentions and the outcome. And there has to be adjustments. I mean, during the teaching process, if you're monitoring and assessing your students' progress, and you see that this is not heading towards the outcome that you want, you need to be able to modify your teaching strategy so that, and maybe provide additional support or adapt the learning environment to better align with your intended goals or your objectives of that lesson. And then lastly, as we've now mentioned in the first theme, is to reflect on that. Reflect on the outcomes achieved, and decide whether this is what you want, and if not, how are you going to change and fix it. Okay, so that's that is all I really have to say for theme 1 and 2. It's very personal and it's very debatable, and there's no like wrong or right here. I was just sharing some of my ideas and my thoughts. But what I'd like to end off with is I'm going to ask you for next week, and I will put this in I'll put it on the announcement on BC Learn. But preparation for next week, if you can then use a metaphor, it could be anything. It could be see myself as a gardener, or I see myself as the captain of a ship, or I see myself as a torchbearer, whatever metaphor you want to use. And then you're going to answer 4 questions. Why do I teach? What do I teach? How do I teach? And how do I know if my teaching is successful? And by answering those 4 questions, you are going to then present, basically, that will be your philosophy of teaching. And you can decide how you want to present this. You can either do an infographic, or, as I said at the beginning, a slide, or even if you just want to type it up, or even if you just want to share it verbally, that's also fine. But to be ready to share your teaching philosophy next week. I think that after all these weeks that we've spent discussing all these various philosophies, I'm hoping that you've had time to reflect on your own teaching and reflect on what is important for you, how you see yourself as a lecturer, how do you see the value that you're adding to the kind of greater picture of education, and what is your perspective? What are your beliefs? What is the paradigm within which you function? You're functioning from some sort of belief paradigm, and that is why you lecture the way you do. So it would be great if you could put that into some form of a presentation and share that with us next week. It'll be really awesome. So yeah, thank you. I must say, I'm not sad to say goodbye to recording myself without actually having anybody listening to me. Um, but I look forward to us engaging again in a live collab next week. And all the best with assignments, etc. I have to be honest, I have not even started looking at your assignment 2. That is my job for the weekend. So I will definitely have your assignments ready and marked by the middle of next week. But I wish you a good weekend. Oh, it's lovely and cold in Cape Town. It's really, I don't know when last we've had a continuous cold spell like this for many years, but it's literally been a week of cold, and it looks like it's going to carry on until next weekend. I'm not complaining. I do love the cold. So anyway, all of you have a great weekend, and I look forward to us meeting again next week.